You are listening to Be Amplified, the podcast with Bree and Thais, episode number 19.
Hey Amplifiers, welcome to Be Amplified, the podcast. My name is Thais.
And I'm Bree Seeley. We are the co-founders of the Amplify Collective,
A movement aimed at radically disrupting how purpose-driven women connect and operate in the world.
because we believe it's not just what you do, but who you are that matters.
Each week, join us for messages and interviews that will leave you feeling amplified and ready to change the world.
Let's do this.
Hola, muchachos.
Oh, hi, Amplifiers. Bree Seeley here.
It's Thais, and we are back to you this Monday with an epic podcast.
We will be interviewing a little bit later in the episode Chelsea from Bossladies magazine.
Yeah, she has created an actual, you can touch and hold magazine, which is kind of rarer these days. And so we are excited to share with you all that she has to offer on how to create a magazine and how to just be a boss lady and an amplified woman in the world. But before we get into the interview, we want to talk a little bit about what does it look like to take action, and specifically taking action when you don't have all the information.
Yeah, I feel like we hear a lot from women that I can't get started because I don't know the next step, or I don't know what comes after the next step, or I just don't have all of the information, and that women typically have this perfection thing where you have to have it all mapped out, be able to see every single step in order to make the first one. And in both of our experiences, actually, it doesn't work like this at all.
Yeah, and so part of it is our strength. We have the strength of seeing the big picture and making sure that we are seeing, both sides of the equation before we make a decision or take an action. And this is why when there are more women or an equal number of men and women on a board of a company, that company does better during the recession, because women tend to be risk aversive. And so this is our strength, and we're really, really great at making sure that we have all the information before we take action. And
it's definitely something that can hold you back at the same time.
Because every strength, too much of a strength becomes a weakness. Every time. Your biggest weaknesses tend to be your strength on steroids. And so we just want to pull that strength back into a normal balance so that it becomes a strength again and it doesn't debilitate you from taking the action you are supposed to take.
Yeah, because if you're always just sitting around waiting to know every single thing about every single thing before you take any single action, you will spend your entire life waiting.
Yeah, so Bree and I, we've really exemplified this through the Amplify Collective.
Oh my God.
And so we're going to share a little bit about what it took to create this business and to create this podcast. And hopefully it will inspire you to get off your ass and go take action, even though you don't have all the answers.
Yeah, most of you know the story of the Amplify Collective. It was totally created on accident. We had no fucking clue what we were doing when we started with this.
And I will also say that most of the times what we coach others is to not do what we did. Because we generally say focus on what you have first, get really good at what you've got going on, and then build from that. And so with the Amplify Collective, neither Bree nor I were really at a space where we can hold another business. And so that was counterintuitive for us to say yes to this. And when we did it, we didn't really know what we were getting ourselves into. All we said yes to at the time was a dinner party a month.
Which at that point was enough. And one thing that I know that Thais and I both know and understand is that you really only truly have to be one step ahead.
Yes.
Maybe two if you're super type A, but one step ahead. So when we started Amplify, we knew that monthly dinner parties was the thing. And that was all we needed to know at the time in order to say yes to it.
Yeah. And if we joke that if we had known back then how much level of effort and work it would have required, to get to where we are, we would have said no. Because it's a lot of effort. But we didn't start that way. We started with something small. Mm-hmm. We stayed committed to that vision of something small, and then it grew organically, and we had no idea where it was going to take us. And I think it was like 4 months into the dinner parties when we started thinking that maybe this was something serious. We kind of developed this pyramid master plan for like how we were going to create an actual movement around Amplify, and we had all these ideas, and we were going to spread it to different cities, and this is what it was going to look like. We created this whole plan, and yet
It didn't work out like that at all.
no, it didn't work out like what we had planned at all. And it actually turned out even better.
Yeah.
And so with the podcast, there's another example. We knew very little about the podcasting world before we entered into creating our own podcast. I mean, Brie doesn't listen to podcasts. I listened to 3 total. And we didn't do an ample amount of research on podcasting because we didn't feel that was necessary. All that we wanted to do is share our message. And so,
and the messages of our guests
Yes,
as well. So
yep.
we knew like we had a list of people we wanted to interview. We kind of divided up the tasks because that's what we're really good at. You know, I researched how to get it on iTunes, Thais researched how to do the editing, and we just kind of did it without necessarily knowing the end result.
we just took it one step at a time. We figured out one thing at a time. All right, good. We figured this out. What's next? What's next? How can we build up on that? What's next? And that's how you grow. That's how you grow a business without getting overwhelmed by the details, because it can get overwhelming and there's so much information out there, and there's so many people trying to tell you how to do it the right way.
And don't get us wrong, it's good to have a plan. Like we said, we sat down and we mapped out an entire plan of how everything was going to work out. And at the time that we mapped out that plan, we didn't have all the information. So we ended up launching dinner parties in Seattle in February before we had all the information about how Amplify was actually going to be playing out.
Yeah.
We didn't have the idea for the mastermind at that time. And so we took action, and we, by no means do we label this a failure, but we took action in a particular direction without being able to see the entire vision. And it's not the action that's supporting our best growth.
Yeah.
And so recently, Thais and I had to have a really tough conversation of this came before we implemented our membership. This came before we saw the entire picture, and it's really not aligned with where we're going anymore. So now what?
But here's what's also key. If we hadn't done that, I don't think we would have gotten to where we are.
Yeah.
We had to have reached out into Seattle. We had to have gone through that experience in order for us to firm into what we had then decided to create. And so just like what Brie said, it was not a failure, and it's definitely not a mistake. It was just, it was a part of the growth and part of the path. And by saying yes to Seattle is what ended up allowing us to say yes to the membership.
Yeah.
Nothing's a mistake. It's part of embracing the messiness of life, that just by being in the mess, you're going to figure out the next step. But if you don't even get into the mess, you're never going to have a clear enough picture to get out of it.
Yeah. So holding on to this story of you have to have all the information, or you have to know everything, or you have to have the perfect logo, or you have to have this or that or whatever before you take a step, is really just your fears allowing you to stay small.
It's a form of resistance. I've known plenty of very high achieving 6-7 figure blah 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 people who don't have websites,
or have terrible
or
websites.
have terrible websites, or terrible copy, or terrible logos, or terrible whatever, things that we think, oh my God, you can't possibly succeed until you have it. I've seen people succeed without it, because those things that people think is important is not actually what's important. Someone's website is not what drives a sale. Someone's copy is not what drives a sale. That's what people want you to believe, because they want you to stay distracted in the small stuff instead of taking the big actions that will actually transform your business and your life.
So if you are, an entrepreneur or not, what is one action step that you could take today to propel you closer to your vision, without knowing the full picture, without being able to see it all? What can you do today with what you have
And where you are.
To do something great today?
Yeah.
And it's kind of a mantra that Thais and I live by. We were, taught by a former business coach of how to connect with this and really allow it to kind of drive your actions. And it is what has helped us create such epic results in both Amplify and our personal businesses.
And so one of the things that I coach people that are just starting to get into the entrepreneurial space, like if they're just dabbling and they want to be of purpose and they know that they're having a call to share a message and they're just getting into it and they don't know what to do next, it's not to build a website. And guess what? It's not to niche. I want to say that again. It's not to niche. We have this thing where you have to get your target market and you have to know who you want to work with right away. Well, if you haven't worked with anyone yet, how do you know who you're supposed to work with? Right? None of that stuff matters. What matters is you start doing the work. If you have an inkling to become a coach, don't worry about the website. Start getting clients. And it doesn't have to be paid at first. I mean, I always say pay because you don't want people to waste your time. Maybe a low investment, or if you're feeling even confident to have a medium investment, whatever feels good for you. But start coaching. Coach everyone. Say yes to everyone at first. And then you'll start exploring, wait a minute, I thought I wanted to be a health coach, but really I want to be an adrenal fatigue coach. Or I thought I wanted to teach people about purpose, but what I really want to do is help midlife crisis. You know what I mean? Like you start getting a niche after you start taking the action of coaching. You can't get the answers if you're not taking action. Clarity comes in action.
Yeah.
And anything else that you do beyond taking those actions are a distraction. Not to say that eventually a website will come into play, not to say eventually niching will be important. It's just that sometimes we put the cart before the horse and we don't really recognize that the fundamentals that we're taught are only fundamentals once we know what we're doing. And we don't know what we're doing if we're not taking action.
Yeah. Yeah, this really came into play for me too because I originally started when I was doing my coaching, was coaching around femininity, which is absolutely something I still do and something I still teach, but it's not what I lead with. And had I not launched as that kind of coach, I wouldn't know, I wouldn't have gotten to where I am today. It's all this progressional like unfolding of your journey essentially to get to what's working, and you're not going to know what's working until you kind of know what doesn't work. And so Thais and I, like we've said, are just major proponents for taking action probably even before you're ready without knowing what it looks like.
Yeah, I think we mentioned this in the decision making episode that we launched a few weeks ago. But a a Nobel Prize winner, economic, what's the word?
Use your words.
I know, economist. There we go. Words. He won the Nobel Prize in economy for the theory, the concept that you will never have all the information you need to make a decision. Literally, you will never have it. And so the people who are successful are the people who take action and make decisions without knowing it, knowing that they will get the information as they go along. Just start. You don't know how to write a book? Start by writing a chapter.
A paragraph.
Or a paragraph or a sentence. Start somewhere, but you have to start. You waiting is only hurting the world. You waiting for some perfect time to do the thing that you've been craving to do is really only hurting the world and your capacity to be a service.
Yeah, and so I mean, part of why we bring all this up is that, Chelsea will share with you when she started with publishing a magazine, like Thais said, you don't really see people publishing magazines anymore except the big conglomerate ones, and even they are struggling. And so when she started, she had no idea how to publish a magazine. And so it's just so important. I mean, so many of the women that we know in the world have gotten to where they are by just starting.
Yeah.
And
well, and actually, this is also something that just came up for me. When the student is ready to teach your peers, and so when you are saying yes to your desires and starting to take action, then the right support will come. When she decided, I'm sure, when she decided to start the magazine process and decided to start taking action on it, that's when the right people came in, and the people that was going to support her in the launch started to come into her life. Usually it's not before. You have to take the hero's journey. Part of the steps in the hero's journey is the mentor, but that only happens after you answer the call.
Yeah.
Right? There's the first step, which there's a call, and then you have to fucking refuse it because of the fear. But then after, when you start to accept the call, that's when the mentor arrives. It comes after the action, not before it. Everything you want is after the action. Stop thinking that you don't have the information necessary. Stop placing your power on somebody else and just start taking action. And the messiness, you don't know what you're doing, guess what, honey? No one knows what they're doing.
Yeah. And it unfolds beautifully. I'm reading The Alchemist right now.
I love
And
that book. That's like my number one recommended book of all times.
it is so good.
I read it
And
every year.
I haven't read it for like 5 or 6 years, and so I figured it was time again. And it's such an easy read. If you haven't read it, go fucking read it. But it's the same thing where he goes on this journey, and the people show up that he needs as he's going to support where his next step is taking him, essentially.
Yeah.
But it's not until he opens up to that next step that the person comes along.
Yeah. Yeah, and Brie and I have found this out as we've progressed and said yes to podcasting. The right resources became available to us and the right people because we were in the mindset for it. What you believe, you see.
Mm-hmm.
What you believe about yourself, you will see reflected in the world. And this is where I love this biblical phrase, God was created in our image. We often think that means that God looks like a man on a cloud overseeing us, but that's not what actually that means. What it means is that we will see reflected to us our beliefs about ourselves. So we see in the world our beliefs about ourselves. And so when we believe that we can do it, and when we believe that we're capable of it, and when we believe that we deserve it, we start seeing that reflected back to us in the universe.
And on the contrary, when we believe that we don't have all the information, and we believe that we're not ready, and we believe we have to have the perfect logo and all of these things to take action, that will also get reflected to you. So if you have all sorts of people surrounding you right now that are saying, oh, well, what about this? Or how are you doing that? Or what does this look like? Or, maybe you should take this class, or blah, 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 trying to give you all these resources. What it actually is saying is that you within yourself actually believe that you don't have what it takes to be successful.
Yes. Yes. It's
a hard pill to swallow sometimes.
It is.
But
we don't have the perfect logo. In fact, I'm not a big fan. I've been staring at it for so long now.
We keep talking about changing our logo.
That we're like, I'm ready to get a new logo.
And our website.
Yeah, I'm ready to have someone design our website. And
personally, I'm so over my website too. Like, I keep changing it, and fuck it.
We're over it.
I can't.
And our success up to this point has not been because of our website. Mm-hmm. And it's not been because of our logo. It's because of who we are and what we've taken a stand for. Will we eventually get a new website? Yes. Will that support us in driving even more sales? Of course, no shit. But we didn't focus on the website to the point of distracting us from what would really create the revenue and the movement that we wanted to create. Yeah. We didn't we're not in delusion of what's important. And I don't want you to be in a delusion of what's important either. Yep. Logos are not important.
They're fun.
They're fun. I mean, I love my personal logo. My friend designed it. So here's the story. This is a good story. When I first decided that I needed to have a logo because everyone that is successful has a logo and I need a logo, I reached out to my tribe, and someone that I knew recommended an artist. And she reached out to me, and her rates were reasonable, and everything was good. And so she asked me what I wanted. Well, I didn't know what I wanted. I had no idea what type of logo I wanted. I just knew that, aren't you the person that designs logos?
Yeah, isn't that your job?
You tell me what I want. And so I told her what I thought I wanted. She created that for me. I paid her. We did the whole process. She was very attentive. She was great. A week after I said yes to this logo, I was like, fuck it. I don't like it. I don't like this logo. And you want to know why? I was never going to be pleased with the logo I had because I thought the logo held all the answers. I thought once I had the right logo, everything would come into place. And that's not the case. And but because I had gone through that experience, I reached out. My friend and I were talking about how this whole logo debacle was not working out. And here's actually what I wanted. Now that I had what I didn't want, I got even more clear on what I did want. She drew it up, and within 5 minutes, I had a new logo. 5 minutes. Because I had gone through the experience of the messy, of the saying yes to what I didn't want and not knowing, and that whole experience. It's a small experience, I get it, but it taught me about the greater things too. In this small experience, if I had not said yes to this bad logo and had gone through that, I probably wouldn't have manifested this friend and this amazing logo that I now have. So you just gotta, embrace the messy. We just don't know where it's going to lead. Yep. And the magic that messiness is going to create. Stop thinking that it has to be perfect. The only thing that's perfect is Instagram. And it's not real anyway.
Yep. So Awesome. Well, let's bring Chelsea on and learn more about
Boss
Boss
ladies.
Ladies.
I love it. All right, let's bring her on. Welcome, Chelsea, to Be Amplified.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Yay!
Well, let us tell our listeners a little bit more about you before we get started. Chelsea is a writer, editor, and entrepreneur based in Santa Monica, California. She's the founding editor of Bossladies, a print magazine celebrating women creatives and entrepreneurs. She's also a freelance editor and editorial consultant, and 3 of her recent projects will be published in the coming year. When she's not making sense of other people's words, Chelsea can be found writing her own. Her most recent collection of essays, This Is What Missing Her Feels Like, is due for publication next year.
Amazing.
Her favorite places are Yosemite National Park and Rockland, her hometown in Maine, both of which she frequents regularly for doses of fresh air.
I love it, Chelsea.
Yes, I've been up to a lot of busy stuff this year, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it sounds great. So we ask every single one of our guests to answer the question of what does it look like for you to live an amplified life?
Okay, so I've been thinking about this question a lot for the past week, and I keep coming back to 2 different answers, so I guess I'm going to give you both.
Okay.
So the first one, I think, for me, has to do with tuning into some sort of inner frequency. And using that to guide your actions rather than anyone else's version of success. And then the second one, at least for me, is surrounding myself with strong and brave and thoughtful and creative women and sort of supporting each other as we all work to build our dreams.
I love it. That's amazing. So let's dive into the first one a little bit more. How did that come to you? Like, why was that an answer for you?
Well, okay, so as soon as I graduated college, like everyone else in my class, I felt like I needed to be looking for a 9-to-5 job where I felt like there was room for growth and possibility of a 401k and all those things that our parents' generation, those things were really important for our parents' generation. And so I did. I took a 9-to-5 full-time position at a commercial real estate company, and it checked all the right boxes if I was sort of comparing myself to what I felt like I ought to be doing, instead of what I really felt like was my calling. And so it took about 2 years for me to realize that I was really unhappy with that particular lifestyle structure. And that even if there was room for growth, and even if I did have all that sort of ingrained stability, it still wasn't the right fit for me. And it didn't feel like I was, as you guys say, living my most amplified life. It felt like I was almost muting myself. And I think that, at least for me, that was like a really unhealthy and unfulfilling way to be living.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And I feel like that's the call a lot of women experience, especially in this coming generation, where we feel like we have to do things differently. We have to honor what is coming up within us. We have to do what feels good. So I love that so much.
Totally. And then let's talk about that second piece for you. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so my dad tells this story about how I was the child that even at like age 4 and age 5, I would schedule myself like back-to-back play dates because I so loved being around people, and I got so much energy from being around people that I sort of wanted to be surrounded all the time. And I think that I'm still a lot like that today. I purposefully schedule a really busy social calendar for myself, because I find so much inspiration from other people's stories and other people's perspectives. And I think that especially other women that are building their own businesses. And I think that if you can come together and sort of bolster each other's confidence in each other's worldview, all of our businesses and lives will only prosper from that.
Totally. So how long have you been in LA?
I've been in LA, I think 4 years now.
Okay. So building a tribe is obviously something that Thais and I are very passionate about. So how did you kind of start when you got to LA? How did you really start diving in to build that tribe so that you had a really fulfilling social life and were connecting with the kinds of women that you wanted to have in your life?
Yeah, well, I won't lie. For the first year, I was very lonely here. For me, it felt like a really hard city to sort of break into. I'm from the East Coast, I'm from Maine, and so coming to LA, I really knew nobody except for my boyfriend who I moved here with. And my first position that I took in LA was as a writer's assistant. So I worked one-on-one for a writer in Santa Monica. But what that meant was that I didn't meet anyone my own age, and I wasn't really connecting with people very often. So for the first year, it was quite lonely. And I moved back to the East Coast for that summer and worked at a vineyard. And at the end of that summer, I had to make a decision whether I was going to come back to LA or stay on the East Coast. And at that time, I committed to moving back to LA, and I decided that I was going to really take the initiative to start finding these women because I knew they existed. I saw them on Instagram, I just didn't know how to meet them. And so one of the things I did when I came back was I started hosting these Bossladies wine nights. So anytime I would meet cool women, I would just say, I gather all these women once a month and we have wine together, usually at Esther's Wine Bar in Santa Monica. And so even someone who I had just met, I would throw out an invitation to. And a lot of times women were really receptive to it and they would come, and slowly that event grew and grew. And a lot of my close friends now in LA sort of stemmed from that little wine gathering that I sort of put together.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I hear a lot of women talk about how this is a really hard city. And I think the thing that people underestimate when you move to a new city, when you're in college, you kind of get put with other people. And it's super easy, like, when you're in school, even in
a dorm room, and you're forced to make friends with those people.
Yeah, and when you move to a new city, you have to put a lot of effort into building a community of people.
One of the things about LA too is that because it's such a spread out city, and as we all know, our traffic is a little bit crazy, you can meet someone who's amazing and could be like a great friend, but if they live across the city, you're rarely going to see them unless you really cut out time for it. And I think that's one of the things that makes LA particularly tricky.
Totally. So I love the conversation about taking initiative, because I feel like a lot of women kind of wait to take initiative. They wait for things to happen to them. So what spurred you to take initiative? Like, what within you was like, no, I fucking have to do it, and I have to do it now?
Yeah, well, I think I had just gotten to a point where I was so lonely. And I mean, my personality is one that needs people to be around, right? So when I don't have people around, I was very melancholy. And it got to the point that it was either I needed to do that or I needed to move where I actually had people, because I need people. I felt like I got to a point where I didn't really have a choice.
And so what was it that made you come back here and take that stand for yourself versus staying in Maine that summer?
Well, this is a rather pitiful answer, but it was my boyfriend. It was that he was coming back here for school, and I really wanted to be with him.
Yeah, I don't know if that's pitiful at all. I mean, that's the reason why I moved to LA, was because my boyfriend was here. And I've heard so many horror stories of people moving across the country for their significant other and then no longer being with that person. And as much as that sucks, I think that that's great. If being in a relationship is what forced you to move into a new place and do new things and try out a new way of being, if that relationship is no longer serving you, then that's okay. It doesn't mean that there was a bad decision to move across the country for someone. It meant that you were meant for something bigger, and being in a new city is what will prompt you to growth.
Yeah. And luckily we're still together and very happy. So it's still very much a good thing.
So what advice would you give women who are wanting to take initiative and they're feeling fed up and they want to take the next step towards whatever it is that they want? What advice would you give them?
Well, I think I've found that the first step is to be really, really clear about what exactly you need. So for me in that first year in LA, it took a while for me to realize and pinpoint that what I was missing was girlfriends that I could laugh with and go out on coffee dates with and watch marathons of girls with. And so I think that, first of all, be really clear about what it is that you need, and then figure out what steps it will take to sort of figure that out for yourself, to work through that for yourself. And then just tackle those steps and make them really, really small steps. Like for me, it was like invite 2 friends to go get wine on Saturday night. and let that sort of grow organically. But find out what it is that you really need to focus on, and then take really small steps to allow yourself to get there.
So, and also speaking of initiative, what was it that inspired you to take initiative to start Bossladies?
So, like I said, one of my earlier positions in LA was that I did marketing for a commercial real estate firm. And commercial real estate is sort of notoriously a very male-dominated industry. And so I found that I was surrounded by predominantly 50-year-old men, day in and day out. But my position was, or part of my position, I guess, was running the social media for this office community down near LAX. And so I was on Instagram all day, and I saw all these amazing women on Instagram that were building businesses that revolved around, very different kinds of creativity. And I was really, really inspired by all these women. So I tracked them very carefully and watched how their careers were growing and how they were progressing. And I knew that there was some sort of like authenticity in that I was missing in the position that I was currently in. And I've always been kind of a storyteller. I went to school for writing. And so what I really wanted to do was tell the stories of these women that were so inspiring to me and were helping to sort of shape the way that I wanted to be living my life. And I wanted to share their stories with women across America and now internationally too, and hopefully inspire other women to be bold and be brave and look into themselves for what kind of work would be most fulfilling. So that's sort of where it stemmed from. And we launched our first issue in May of this year, and we told the stories of 25 women in Los Angeles.
That is just fantastic.
Yeah, it's been really, really exciting. And I was sort of shocked by the reception that we received, and obviously very excited that people were relating to it.
And, I would love to know a little bit more about the process that it takes to create a print magazine. I mean, why did you decide to go print, and what does it look like to create a magazine in this age where everything is so digital?
Well, I have always been interested in book design. I'm not a designer, but I've always sort of gravitated toward typography and layout. So I knew that I wanted to put together something that people could hold in their hands and something really beautiful. And then in terms of what it takes, you need a really good designer, which I had for the first issue. Her name's Francesca Fugues, and she runs a design firm called Loud House Creative. And she did all of our design for the first issue, and she did a phenomenal job. So there's that piece. There's the piece of having really talented photographers, which we had as well. And then once you have all of your content and all the photography, it's about finding a really great printer who you trust. And at least for us, it was really important and remains really important to have an ad-free magazine, which has a lot of challenges in and of itself. But like I said, part of what I really wanted to do was create a really beautiful, tangible object. And for me, at least at this point in Bossladies' growth, it didn't make sense to take this beautiful magazine and put advertisements inside it. So that's sort of where we're at right now. And right now we're working on putting together the content for our issue 2, which will launch. It's again a Los Angeles-based issue, and that will launch in November of this year.
Awesome.
That's really amazing. And when it comes to the magazine and the process, how far out do you have to plan in order to make it happen?
Yeah, so like I said, we're doing our next issue. We'll publish in November, but we started our photo shoots last week, and all of the women were selected just about 2 months ago now. So we're planning out about 7 or 8 months.
Wow.
Which is a lot further out than we planned for the first issue. The first issue we planned out 4 months. And it just kind of, this time we wanted to allow ourselves a little more space so we had a little more freedom and could be more creative as we went through the process.
So in light of taking initiative, when you first had the idea, I want to do a magazine, what was that first step that you took? Like, what was the first thing that you're like, okay, this is my first baby step towards claiming that this is what I want to create?
I think the very first, okay, so I happened to have an intern that month. My college is called Colby College, and it's based in Maine, and they do a Jan Plan program where students can sort of do anything they want for the month. So my boyfriend's younger brother and his girlfriend came to live with us and be our interns for the month. So I worked with this amazing young woman named Shauna, and she and I put together a draft email that we were going to send to all 25 of these women that we wanted to be in the issue. And after we reached out to about half of them, and I saw that, things were actually coming together and could actually maybe happen, then I scheduled a coffee date with Francesca to see if it was a project that she was interested in working on with me. And thankfully, she was excited about it, and we teamed up to do that together.
Awesome. So I also interview women. So talk to me about what the process is like for you. How do you choose the women that you interview? How do you choose which parts of their story to highlight? Like, what does that look like for you?
So I find that, okay, first, your first question, how do I choose the women? So for me, I try to create a variety of different kinds of industries in each magazine. So sometimes what that means is that there's a lot of really cool women that I don't get to feature only because maybe their industry syncs up too closely with another industry. So my first step is deciding which industries are important for me to feature and which women I think are at the forefront of that particular industry. And for me, it also has a lot to do with the community that they're building and whether they're building a community that's inspired by them. I think it's really important to find people who are able to inspire and incite something in other women. And then what was the second part of your question?
So how do you then choose
which part of their story to highlight?
Or how to tell their story?
So the way that our process works is that I send each woman a Q&A of about 20 to 25 questions, and I have them answer their 10 favorite questions. And then the content that comes back, I sort of just shape and hone to tighten it up so that we can fit it all in the magazine. And then what happens is I go to all of the photo shoots with my photographers. And usually I have about 10 to 15 minutes to sit down and talk with the women. And that's where I tease out the information that I feature in their introduction. And a lot of times what I'm trying to hit in that intro is A, the reason that I picked her, why I think she's so cool, and then B, some steps along the path of her journey that I think will help other women see where she's coming from and maybe relate to her on a deeper level. I think it's also really important to try to show not just sort of the statistical facts about the businesses that these women are growing, but sort of show the humanness behind their business, show moments when maybe they stumbled, show things that were particularly hard for them and how they worked through that. I think we're trying really hard to sort of tell transparent stories that don't maybe gloss over what it means to be running your own business.
I love that. And so speaking of, where have you stumbled? What has been a challenge for you in creating your magazine?
Where do I start, right? So here's one. This is like a very, very personal thing that I'll share.
We like that.
So in the first issue, almost all of our women were able to schedule a time for a photo shoot with us. But there were a few that just said, I would love to be part of this. I'm really excited about it, but I just don't have time right now for a photo shoot. Can I submit to you shots that I've had taken in the past? And for the first issue, I was just really excited that they were excited about being in it. And I said, of course, I'd love that. Thank you. One woman in particular, the image that she shared with me, she thought that she owned the rights to. And I later found out from the photographer that she didn't actually own the rights for publication to that image. And I actually found that out as the files were already at the printer to be printed. And so I, quickly made a negotiation with this photographer and purchased the rights to that image. But it was sort of a very stress induced day. Mostly because I certainly don't want I don't want to be doing harm to anyone else's business, and I strongly believe in original content and owning what you publish. And that was something that I didn't anticipate coming up at all. And it was a very stressful moment for me.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you shared that. And I find so many of my clients come to me at one point and another, and I know that our clients do too, and I'm sure Bree's clients do as well. So many clients, all the clients, how they make a mistake or how a mistake was made. And a lot of them kind of go through an existential crisis around their kind of first ever mistake. Like, who am I to be doing this? Should I even be doing this? What does this mean about me? And so I'm curious, how did you move through that? And not mistake, I don't like the word mistake, but you know what I mean, through that hiccup without allowing it to define you or to immobilize you?
So there were lots of tears. So there was a moment of immobilization. But then I think for me, communication is the way that I work through a lot of problems. So I talked it through with my friend who's a lawyer. And I was like, okay, what exactly do I need to do to make sure that I'm taking care of myself and taking care of my business and doing everything in the right way? And she talked me through all these processes. And then I talked it all through with the photographer. And for me, it's like knowing the systems that you need to be participating in to be, to be working in business, and then B, making sure that people understand your motives and understand when you just didn't understand. For me with this photographer, it was just that I didn't know who owned the image, and conveying that to her so that she knew there was no malicious intent was really important to me.
I think that that's powerful. What I have seen also to really work is communication. And this is something that Brie and I are so adamant about. But when you can communicate from an intention of wanting to find a commonality and wanting to find a common solution, I find that 99% of people are willing to meet you halfway. And it requires a sense of intention and the strength to then ask the person to meet them halfway. And this type of ask is not very comfortable for us. I think a lot of us would rather just, close it down and not talk and not share. And so I love, Chelsea, that you're sharing this, and that through your vulnerability, we're going to inspire so many people to ask for what they want and to have the intention of wanting to reach a middle ground that's happy for all parties.
I think it takes a lot of vulnerability to admit maybe you don't have it all totally figured out, and being able to admit that to someone else and work through that, at least for me, is a very tricky thing. I feel like I'm a person that has maybe too much pride. But in this particular moment, like, breaking that all down and just being totally transparent was really important.
I love it.
So what is your favorite interview question to ask women?
Okay, so this is a new favorite interview question from this issue that I didn't do last time, but it's, what is something about you that most people don't know? And the answers that I get back to this question are amazing.
So what is something about you that most people don't know?
Oh, wow. Okay. Goodness, I feel like these women have a long time to think about this, right?
Not to put you on the spot or anything.
And one of the boss ladies this past time said this too, and I think it holds true for me as well, that I'm kind of an oversharer. So there's not so many things that most people don't know. I guess one thing that I don't often share is that I lost my sister when I was a senior in college. And that in a really big way impacted what I wanted for my life, and sort of my values that I was basing all my decisions on. So that's a heavy hitter, but I think that's the answer for me.
I think that's very beautiful. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that experience has moved you in many, many ways.
Yeah. I hold her with me through through everything I do.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so Chelsea, the last question: where can people learn more about you and about your amazing magazine?
Okie doke. So the magazine's website is www.bossladies.us. And then our Instagram handle is bossladiesmag.
Okay.
And then my personal editorial website is just chelseasonksen.com.
Amazing. Well,
And wait, before we move on, everyone should go to bossladies.us because Thais and I both guest blogged on there in the recent past, and y'all should go read all of the articles
on the
website,
Totally.
including ours.
Well, all of this will be in the show notes for those of you that are interested in learning more about Chelsea. You can find that there. And as always, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat,
All of the places.
Just look for us at the Amplify Co. or the Amplify Collective. You'll find us. We're there. We love social media. And go be amplified, people. Go live the amplified life that you've always dreamed of, because shit, it's now, Like, what other time do you have?
All right, everyone. We'll see you next week.